A depraved, perverted old man had evil intentions towards the boy. Noticing something unusual, Carter told the boy to quickly get away from the man. Not only did the man not leave, but he also began to grope the boy. Carter, who inherently loathed evil, could no longer bear it. The boy bent down and picked up a wine bottle. His small friends, terrified, ran off in all directions, but Carter was blocked by the perverted old man. The enraged pervert wanted to throw the boy down a cliff. In that critical moment, Carter used the small knife in his hand to stab the pervert's arm forcefully. He thought Carter had escaped him, but little did he know, this was just the beginning of the boy's lifelong nightmare, because that white pervert was a major figure in the political world. Soon after, young Carter was brought to the police station, charged with attempted armed robbery and injuring an official. Police Chief Della was a severe racist. In Della's eyes, black people were born violent criminals, and Carter, who had committed this crime, deserved death even more. Since Carter was only 11 and couldn't be sent to prison, Della placed him in a juvenile reformatory for 10 years, until he turned 21, when he would have a chance to return to society. From then on, Carter's hellish life in the reformatory began. 8 years swiftly passed. Unable to endure life in the reformatory, Carter escaped under the cover of night, heading towards the free world he had always yearned for. After escaping, Carter served in the military for several years. During his service, his life underwent a major transformation. He not only realized that knowledge and tolerance were the true liberators for black people, but also overcame his stutter, even becoming the European middleweight boxing champion. When he joyfully returned home, he went to a bar to celebrate the new life that was about to begin. As soon as he stepped into the bar, he was captivated by a beautiful woman. Before he could approach her to strike up a conversation, a man sat down in front of him. Carter intended to use his fists to teach the man a lesson, but the beautiful girl, Louise, quickly stepped forward to intervene and invited Carter to dance. The two danced in the ballroom to the melodious music. Louise told Carter, "Your hands aren't just for fighting." They both fell in love at first sight. He thought a beautiful life would begin from this point. That evening, as Carter had just walked Louise to her doorstep, upon hearing of his return, Della brought people to find him. Della demanded he return to serve the remaining 2 years of his previous sentence. Carter, well aware of Della's power, could only helplessly follow them into the car. Imprisoned again, Carter did not despair, but transformed all his sorrow and anger into strength. Every day, he relentlessly practiced high-intensity boxing or continuously read books, learning to enhance his knowledge. He planned to turn his body into a weapon and then use it to regain his freedom or defeat those who had imprisoned him. 2 years later, Carter was finally released. Stepping out of the prison gates, he felt reborn. He secretly vowed in his heart, "From now on, I will never set foot in prison again, not even half a step." Because he consistently maintained high-intensity training in prison, his boxing skills not only didn't diminish, but significantly improved. In his first match, his opponent was an undefeated white champion. Carter transformed all his hatred into powerful punches. The punches, like a tempest, continuously rained down on the white champion's head. Throughout the process, the white champion had no ability to counterattack whatsoever. Before the first round ended, the champion was knocked to the floor and couldn't get up again. His powerful boxing technique and speed were like a storm, earning him the nickname the Hurricane from everyone. After winning one match after another, he also married Louise, the woman he had met in the bar 2 years prior. Witnessing Carter's success in both love and career and his popularity among the people, Della, who had always been resentful, felt uneasy. It was a special period when racial struggles in America were quite intense. Although the law had granted equal rights to black people, there were countless difficulties in its implementation. Seeing black people being beaten and mistreated on TV made Carter, now a famous figure, feel extremely indignant. A reporter nearby seized the opportunity to ask him a loaded question. "If you hate these police officers so much, why don't you stand up and fight back?" Carter then expressed his thoughts in a jocular tone. "These police officers who hate black people, all of them deserve to die." Carter once said, "If I were to act, I could take down 5 people at once." Although he had warned the reporter not to reveal these words, surprisingly, the next day, it became a front-page headline. This immediately ignited further hatred of white people towards black people. That evening, the windows of Carter's house were smashed with stones by vandals, along with threats to kill black people like them. His wife thought he shouldn't say such things in public. Carter understood that very well, but he also didn't want to keep pretending to be a dead dog. However, he did not yet know what situation he would face next. Not long after, Carter had another boxing match. Carter, enraged, unleashed his full energy. His furious punches directly cornered his white opponent, turning him into a live target. Had the referee not intervened, the opponent might have been knocked out directly. However, even in such a clearly dominant match, in an era where white people did not accept black people, the final result was still a white victory. Hearing this result, the audience in the stands cheered in protest. Carter just gave a bitter smile and stepped down from the ring. He was already too accustomed to the unfair treatment from white people. That evening, in a frustrated mood, he went to a bar to unwind. He thought that as long as he didn't resist, everything would be peaceful, but things were not as simple as he imagined. Just as he was drinking in the bar, a murder occurred at a nearby bar. 2 black men used guns to kill 3 white people in the bar, then quickly drove away in a white car. Coincidentally, that night Carter was also driving a white car on his way home. He was stopped by the police. The police saw that the white car indeed contained 2 black men. Immediately, both were taken to the crime scene. Although the witness shook their head, confirming he was not the culprit, Della, who still hated him, was not about to let go so easily. Not long after, Della arrived. Although Carter repeatedly asserted his innocence in the matter, to put him behind bars, Della coerced 2 witnesses to give false testimony, stating that Carter was the murderer they had seen, along with the threat. "If you don't comply, you will face consequences." Facing Della's threats, they were forced to agree. Soon after, Carter was brought to court. Not only was the judge white, but there wasn't a single black person on the jury either. Given such a situation, coupled with Della's false testimony, the final outcome was predictable. For 3 lives, Carter was sentenced to 3 life sentences. His wife was in profound agony upon hearing the news, while the white people nearby laughed with unusual cheerfulness. Carter stood speechless, his face stunned. He didn't understand why this world treated him this way, and he had no idea when the justice that black people longed for would finally appear. Unable to fight against the powerful white legal system, Carter ultimately could not keep his vow to never go to prison again. Upon arriving at the prison, he refused to wear the inmate uniform, which symbolized guilt, asserting, "I am not guilty. It is the current law that has committed a crime against me." Subsequently, the prison warden put him in a dark cell for 90 days. When the iron door clanged shut, Carter's soul felt as if it were bound by invisible chains. The environment here was gloomy, narrow, without a speck of light, only the light at the door flickering on and off, symbolizing the silent passing of a day. Carter tried to endure the solitude, but an intense feeling of powerlessness began to make him experience vague hallucinations. 2 voices incessantly echoed in his ears. One, with an incredibly arrogant and powerful tone, told Carter to use his fists to fight against his current adversity, while the other, appearing meek and weak, incessantly whispered in plea, "What do I do now?" The 2 voices clashed intensely in his mind. In reality, Carter also didn't know what he should do. He could only pull the blanket over his head and quietly sob. Finally, Carter persevered thanks to his strong conviction. When the 90 days ended, Carter's white shirt was tattered, but his dignity and spirit remained pure, untainted. To declare his innocence, he still wore that worn-out suit. The prison officer greatly admired his will, so they broke protocol and found him a plain white shirt without stripes or a prisoner number. This was also Carter's minimum demand to affirm his innocence. In prison, Carter suddenly realized that if the white people's punishment was merely to confine him, then as long as he didn't leave prison, they couldn't punish him. He refused to work or eat prison food. Every day, he was busy researching his case from beginning to end, from his arrest and trial to his conviction. He continuously appealed to higher authorities, but for 7 consecutive years, he received the same result. At this point, Carter felt there was no hope left. Perhaps he would have to live in prison for the rest of his life. To avoid being a burden to his wife outside, and also to free himself from desires and attachments, he directly proposed divorce to his wife. Although his wife was deeply distressed and didn't want to separate, Carter turned his back and walked away without looking back. To maintain his perseverance, Carter began to live by his own routine. When others were awake, he slept. When others slept, he was awake. At this point, he became emotionless, retaining only his will and indomitable spirit. He believed that as long as he had no desires and no prison in his heart, no one could imprison him. To find faith to live, he began to try writing a book about his experiences. The compelling content of the book was recognized by a publisher. Not long after, his book, The 16th, was officially published. Its compelling content not only filled bookshelves, but was also translated into multiple languages and sold worldwide. The public was deeply moved by his story, spontaneously beginning to organize street protests. Not only did many celebrities come out in support of Carter, but even the boxer Muhammad Ali spoke up for him. There was even a white singer who wrote a song called Hurricane dedicated to him. However, all of this didn't have much effect. Just as Carter was in despair, a black boy with the potential to create a miracle appeared. The boy, Lesra Martin, coincidentally read Carter's autobiography. Its amazing content immediately captivated Lesra's attention. Seeing that Carter's experiences also originated from the ghetto, the boy felt as if he was seeing his own past. From a young age, Lesra was intelligent, quick-witted, and possessed superior intellect. But due to his family's poverty, he had no opportunity for education. By chance, the boy came into contact with 3 white Canadians. They felt he was moldable, and with his parents' consent, they took him to Canada to live and study together. To better understand Carter's life, Lesra also began to practice punching bags and boxing at home. Under his influence, some white people also began to read Carter's autobiography. When they read the part where Carter described himself as an emotionless machine, likely soon to vanish with the wind and be forgotten by everyone, Lesra felt deep regret for Carter's fate and thought he should do something for him to help him persevere and live well. So Lesra began to try writing letters to Carter, expressing his admiration and thoughts. Not long after, Lesra was overjoyed to receive a reply. The boy never expected his idol would actually write back to him. Carter wrote in the letter, "Reading your letter makes me feel warm and cared for. I have gained more hope and faith in life." As the two continuously corresponded, they gradually became confidants, with nothing to hide. Sometime later, Lesra decided to visit Carter. On a stormy day with thunder and lightning, Lesra arrived outside Carter's place of confinement. Although they had never met before, Lesra recognized Carter immediately in a corner. Carter greatly admired Lesra's courage to travel thousands of miles to get there. As they talked about the 3 white Canadians who had adopted Lesra, Carter, who had always harbored prejudices against white people, had once suspected they had other motives. However, this time he was wrong. Seeing Lesra could live happily and joyfully with them, he paternally advised Lesra to study and write well, because writing was a much more powerful weapon than fists. At this point, Carter was completely different from before. Previously, he had spent half his life training his body into a weapon, longing to use his fists to smash all injustice. But now, he finally understood that growing up with hatred would only turn oneself into a beast. Only by elevating one's thinking could true liberation be achieved. Many years of imprisonment did not dull his edges. Instead, they forged him into an intellectual who would not yield to life. The meeting time was always short. When Lesra left, he and Carter took a photo together. This meeting was like a sudden ray of sunshine illuminating Carter's clouded soul, also making him gradually feel hope. Carter, who still didn't believe there were good white people, sought out a fellow inmate who had traveled the world to ask. The fellow inmate told him, "Not all white people are bad. I was once saved by a white person 3 times." This put Carter, who had once hated white people to the core, in a dilemma. He began to re-examine himself. He finally broke down his prejudices and wanted to meet them. Not long after, led by Lesra, they went to the prison together. The meeting was quite pleasant. The 3 white individuals were very keen to understand the details of the case so they could help Carter, who had been falsely accused. Thinking of all he had suffered, all caused by white people, Carter, who no longer held any illusions, didn't want to talk much. When they asked again, Carter suddenly became extremely agitated. The atmosphere became extremely tense. This meeting ultimately ended unhappily. When they parted, they left Carter a gift. He opened it and discovered it was his boxing uniform. The warmth from his friends immediately moved Carter beyond words. He skillfully put on the uniform and immediately recaptured the feeling of being in the ring from days past. In this moment, he decided to trust these 3 white people, believing that they were good people who had come to help him. So as not to disappoint their expectations, he resolved to continue the fight. In their correspondence, Lesra always sent Carter warm photos of them together. All of this became a spiritual support for Carter, compensating for the feeling of helplessness that had long been absent from his heart. He thought everything would go smoothly, but reality is always harsher than ideals. That day, they unexpectedly received a call from Carter, but the news was still that his appeal had been denied. Before Lesra's friends could comfort him, Carter abruptly hung up. Sometimes people are not afraid to face disappointment, but when hope, once kindled, is extinguished again, the blow is often fatal. Carter once again shut the door of struggle in his heart. He wrote a final letter to Lesra and his friends, hoping they would not reply or contact him again, because their love only made him weak, and the weak found it very difficult to survive in prison. Another year swiftly passed. That day, Carter received another letter from Lesra. Although he remembered Carter's instruction not to write, he still wanted to share two things: a photo of him and his girlfriend, and his high school diploma. In truth, in Lesra's heart, he had long regarded Carter as a guide. It was precisely because of his influence that Lesra's life gained direction. Carter looked at Lesra's letter, his mind wandering, and ripples stirred in his heart. That day, several people received a call from Carter again. They thought it was some good news, but the result was that Carter was about to reach his breaking point. Several friends had long considered Carter as family. For the sake of their friend, they made a bold decision. Not long after, Carter received another call from them. They told Carter to look out the window across from the fluctuating light in an upstairs room. It turned out they had directly moved to live opposite the prison. They not only wanted to provide spiritual companionship to Carter, but also to devote all their efforts to exonerate him. They pledged, "If we can't get you out, we won't leave this place." The friends' heartwarming decision immediately moved Carter deeply and also gave him the motivation to re-examine the case. To quickly ascertain the truth of the matter, several people sought out the pro bono lawyer who had always helped Carter. The lawyer didn't place much hope in these amateurs because the case involved too many things, and the trial period was too long. Previously, many members of the public and quite a few celebrities had also come to help, but eventually gave up due to the excessive time commitment and lack of hope. After expressing their determination, the friends received nearly 10 tons of documents collected over the past 10 years. In their reunion, Carter cautioned them to be extremely careful because exonerating him could push many people to their limits. Through their conversation, they learned that the time of the report that night was 2:45. There were several witnesses, and the motive for the crime was revenge because the bar did not serve black people. After that, several people began to reorganize the 10-year archive of documents. As the documents on the wall grew, just as they found a glimmer of a clue, a threat came from the prison warden. "If you want to live safely, stop investigating, whether it's you in prison or your friends outside." However, the three white individuals did not give up because of this. They first went to the home of an old witness. Unexpectedly, the person who opened the door was the witness's wife, and this witness had died under unusual circumstances before the trial. Although they couldn't meet the person, they obtained crucial information. That bar not only served black people, but was also very friendly towards them. This showed that the police's so-called racial hatred motive for the crime was completely unfounded. Just as they had found a little clue, Della blocked them again at a street corner. Della threatened them. "You'd best return to Canada immediately, otherwise, I'll make sure you won't have peace." Then he got into his car and sped off. This made the friends a bit worried. To ensure safety, they sent Lesra back to Canada, leaving the remaining three to continue searching for clues. Carter saw the worry in the woman's eyes and said, "I am very happy to see your selfless dedication. If you wish to return, I can understand." However, the woman firmly replied, "As long as you are not out, we will not leave." After an open conversation, Carter provided them with another clue. A private detective had submitted photos and physical evidence, but without any records. That very night, several people tirelessly went to the detective's house. Unexpectedly, the detective had also passed away many years ago. Several people found the detective's notes in storage. The notes showed that the police received the report at 2:28, and Carter left the bar at 2:30. Clearly, he had absolutely no time to commit the crime. However, the police records indicated the time of the report was 2:45. Clearly, someone had tampered with this time. After some effort, they found the old card recording the time of the report. Unexpectedly, Carter recognized the handwriting on it. It turned out that all those words were written by Della, because at 11 years old, this very signature sent him to prison. So even if it turned to ashes, he would absolutely recognize it. This was enough to prove that Della had been manipulating things behind the scenes. He not only bribed key witnesses, but also arbitrarily and secretly altered related data. This crucial discovery became the pivotal point to overturn the entire case. To stop them from continuing their investigation, Della began to employ despicable tactics. He secretly tampered with their car, hoping to eliminate them through a car accident. Although the car had serious problems, fortunately, none of them were injured. Since the evidence had been fully gathered, the next step was to submit it to the local court or the federal court. The two lawyers and Carter had a dispute. Carter argued that they should bypass the state court and submit directly to the federal court. However, the lawyer said that if the federal court did not accept the trial, these newly collected pieces of evidence would never be used again, meaning he would never have another chance. Nevertheless, Carter was still willing to take the gamble. He believed the federal court was a humane place, and because he was over 50 years old, he didn't want to wait any longer. More than 30 years of imprisonment is quite enough for me, and many friends by my side have also been put in danger because of me. Finally, the lawyer agreed to Carter's request. On the day of the court appearance, all his fellow inmates came to see him off. Carter walked with steady steps, like a boxer about to enter a match. This was a trial where it seemed the side of justice was surely destined to fail. Sarakin emphasized the risk of bypassing the state court to submit new evidence. Once rejected, there will be no chance left. On the faces of the prosecution team, everyone was beaming. Nevertheless, Carter steadfastly insisted on submitting the new evidence. Seeing this, Sarakin allowed Carter's lawyer to proceed. This made the prosecution lawyers, who were unprepared, begin to worry because they had thought Sarakin wouldn't even consider it and thus hadn't prepared a defense for this case. Seeing the judge give an affirmative answer, the burden in Carter's lawyer's heart was finally lifted. Then, he began to present the entire course of the case. The lawyer pointed out that the entire case was a sham, that the police and prosecution had colluded to fabricate evidence and distort the truth, and that the underlying reason was simply racism. Seeing the judge willing to consider their testimony, Carter could not suppress the emotion in his heart. All the injustice accumulated over many years, in this moment, transformed into simple words. Please, Your Honor, meticulously examine this evidence. Do not disregard the truth. Do not go against your conscience. Do not disrespect the law. Return to the highest principle of upholding the law. Please, Your Honor, deliver justice for me. Finally, the judge upheld the original spirit of the law. To allow a conviction based on racial discrimination to stand would be an insult to the United States Constitution. Immediately, the judge declared Carter innocent and ordered his immediate release from court. His life of 30 years of wrongful imprisonment finally came to an end. Carter finally achieved physical and spiritual freedom. Everyone present cheered for Carter. His fellow inmates also celebrated wildly for him. Stepping out of the courthouse, he lifted his head to look at the sky. In this moment, he finally saw the sunlight once again. We too can be Carter in reality. When facing difficulties, as long as we persevere in our beliefs and never give up, the moment we lift our heads, we will surely embrace our own storm. Today's story ends here. Thank you for watching the film. What do you think of this film? Please leave a comment below the video.